Today we will discuss the events that took place in Italy in 2022. What happened to the 26-year-old Italian celebrity Carol Malley, who made headlines on television? Although Carol was the victim of a crime, some people said she deserved what happened to her. Carol was born on December 23, 1995 in Italy. Her father was Dutch and her mother was Italian. When Carol was a child, her parents separated and her father moved to the Netherlands, while Carol remained with her mother in Italy, as she was the sole breadwinner. Those who knew Carol well described her as a happy, beautiful, and slightly shy young woman who loved adventure and travel. In 2015, Carol became pregnant, although it was unplanned. However, she decided to keep the child. Carol was happy when her child was born, but she faced some difficulties, like many young parents. Carol and her partner moved to Verona, where she got a job in a shoe store. Verona is a city in northern Italy that is very popular with tourists. In 2019, Carol fell in love with another man and started a secret relationship with him. She then confessed this to her partner, who was the father of her child, and they separated. Carol then moved to Milan with her new boyfriend, while her son remained with his father in Milan. Carol got a job in another shoe store and tried to visit her son whenever she could. However, Carol's life and the lives of millions of others soon changed when the pandemic began. Due to the widespread restrictions, the store where Carol worked closed down, and she was in need of money to support herself and be involved in her son's life after losing her source of income because of the pandemic. Carol is looking for new ways to make money, and so she discovered the OnlyFans platform during the pandemic. OnlyFans witnessed real prosperity as people were confined to their homes. Some sought new ways to find pleasure, while others looked for a means to earn money. Carol achieved some success by selling her nude photos, and this seemed to her an easy way to make money, like many other girls. Carol started her journey on OnlyFans by selling her photos, and gradually she began making nude videos, which ultimately led her to producing adult videos. During her work in this industry, Carol used a pseudonym, which I'll tell you about later. Carol lost some friends who did not approve of what she was doing, and some people condemned her, but she loved this work and considered herself an actress no different from those who appear in regular films and TV shows. She was playing a role according to the script given to her, and the only thing that was different was the genre. She knew she couldn't work in this industry forever, as demand would decline as she aged, so she planned for her future and thought about what she would do when she stopped making adult films. At the same time, Carol was facing more and more problems in her personal life, as her relationship with her new boyfriend gradually deteriorated because he did not approve of her new profession. David could not bear the idea of his girlfriend spending time with other men, while Carol considered it just a job and not something personal. Due to this difference in opinion, her boyfriend left her. At that time, Carol was living with her boyfriend's parents, and after the separation, she had to look for a new place to live. She moved to Rise Caldina, a municipality that falls under the city of Milan. At the same time, a new man entered her life, David Fontana, who was 17 years older than her, as he was 42 years old and worked at a bank on social media. He seemed to be a successful person who enjoys life and loves cooking and trying out recipes. David was also a photographer and had been married for many years, and everyone who knew him believed he was a happy man in his marriage, but the truth was different. David was looking for new feelings and meeting women online to diversify his personal life. To attract the women he liked, he offered them free photo shoot sessions, and Carol was one of those who agreed to his offer at first. They communicated online, and when David realized that Carol was interested in him, he asked to meet her in person. Their first meeting was in November 2020, but this story did not end there, as their meetings became frequent and their relationship turned into an intimate one. Fontana was married, but that did not stop him. It seemed he had fallen in love with Carol in early 2021. Fontana decided to separate from his wife and devote all his time to Carol. He moved to an apartment in the same residential complex where Carol lived. David helped her make adult videos, and according to some reports in the Italian press, they were able to earn good money from it. David was essentially her manager. He knew he was not the only man in Carol's life, and he was prepared for that. Carol dated other men from time to time, and this in addition to what she was doing to make a living, later became a reason for many to judge her and speak of her with contempt. In the fall of 2021, Carol started dating a young man named Salvatore, who was her colleague at work, and their relationship became serious. Salvatore gave Carol a ring. Carol was happy, but David was still present in her life. In 2022, Carol was highly in demand in her profession, and at the same time, she did not stop posting videos on her OnlyFans account. However, she was now not just uploading videos, but also creating content to fulfill the desires of her subscribers in exchange for additional money. The subscribers would write to Carol and request her to make videos doing what they wanted to see. She would set a price for those videos, and after receiving the payments, she would start filming with David's assistance. It should also be noted that David was always receiving his share of the profits in return for helping her create content for her OnlyFans page. Carol knew that she could not work in this industry for the rest of her life, so she was planning to save more money and move to Verona to start a new life and live with her son. Carol was close to realizing her plans, but in January 2022, she became less active on social media. She almost stopped posting new content on her OnlyFans account and took a break from adult film acting. After about 2 months, some of her friends started sending messages to Carol, and she always replied, saying that she was fine, just a bit tired. In one of the messages, she said that she had taken a vacation and gone to Dubai. But as it later became clear, this was a carefully orchestrated lie. In March 2022, a tourist who was wandering in the picturesque areas of Porno, an Italian municipality in the province of Treviso in Lombardy, made a horrific discovery. The tourist noticed several black garbage bags and, upon approaching, saw a hand with long nails protruding from one of them. The police officers who arrived at the crime scene were faced with something horrific. In total, they found 4 garbage bags containing body parts. The remains were in such a condition that it was initially difficult to determine whether they belonged to a female or male victim. Experts later determined that the victim was a woman, and that the remains had likely been stored in a freezer for some time before being dumped in a remote area. Investigators checked all recent reports of missing women, but could not link the remains to any of them. The woman's face was burnt, but the police were hopeful they could identify her because 8 of her distinctive tattoos were intact. One tattoo on her arm said "Step by Step," and another on her collarbone read, "I wonder I lost." There was also a tattoo on her back that said "Elegance." The authorities believe the killer must have known the victim well, as there were no reports of a woman matching her tattoo description going missing. The police released photos of the victim's tattoos, hoping someone could help identify her. This is where Andrea Torti comes in. After seeing the tattoo photos released by the police, Torti began his own investigation, which not only helped identify the victim as Carol Maltese, but also assisted in finding the person who committed the crime. Torti said the turning point in his investigation was a call from a friend who told him the victim's stage name was Charlotte Angie. Comparing the tattoos found on the body to the details provided by Torti's friend, the investigators were able to confirm the victim's identity. Angie's social media accounts, one photo after another, one video after another, capturing photos and enlarging them. Soon he realized that the tattoos in those photos matched the ones the police had listed. Torti searched the internet for people who had worked with Angie, like directors and agencies. He contacted his agency, and the representative of the first agency said they no longer worked with Angie and hadn't heard from her in a long time. Through a second agency, Torti discovered Charlotte Angie's phone number. He also discovered that her real name was Carol Maltese. After Torti obtained Carol's phone number, he began calling her, but her phone was always turned off. As a last attempt, he sent her a text message, and he was very surprised when he received a response. The person he was communicating with said he was a journalist and asked if he could call her to explain everything, assuring it would only take 3 minutes. But the person he was communicating with avoided the call in every possible way and replied that he didn't have time for journalists right now. Nevertheless, Torti did not give up. All he needed to confirm or refute his theory was to hear Carol's voice. He replied that a woman's body with tattoos had been found in Brasilia, and the police had issued a call to identify the victim. He believed that several of the tattoos matched the ones he knew, and he found her number to verify this, and he wanted to explain it to her and talk to her. The response was polite but curt. She said, "Oh, I understand several people have told me about this girl, and fortunately I'm fine." Tortai did not back down, and he sent a text message saying, "If you don't want to talk on the phone, can you send a 3-second voice message just to confirm it's you? To be honest, if I don't receive a response, I'll contact the police to investigate the matter." But the person Tortai was exchanging messages with refused to send a 3-second voice message. At that moment, Tortai realized it was not Carol, and he handed over all the materials he had to the police. As for the emotions he experienced while talking to someone who pretended to be Carol, he said, "I confess that I felt fear and anxiety before I told them everything." He asked the police officers to confirm certain details he was not sure about, and they confirmed that the tattoos on the victim's side were red. He was afraid that the person who had harmed Carol might be one of her family members, and in that case, the tragedy would be greater for those who loved her. The police had to move quickly because the person who pretended to be Carol might flee after realizing that Tortel had discovered everything. Then David Fontana came to the station to report that he had seen the photos published by the police and that the tattoos resembled those of his missing friend Carol. It was strange that David reported Carol's disappearance only after her body was found. When questioned about the last time he saw Carol, David began to change his story. At first, he said it was in January, then he said it was in February, and then he mentioned a third option, saying he hadn't seen her in about 2 weeks. It was clear that he was hiding something. When the investigator interrogated David, he finally confessed that he had taken Carol's life. The police discovered horrifying details about the case, where David said that on January 11th, 2 months before the body was found, he and Carol were filming a video at the request of one of her fans. The person who wanted this video desired something extreme, and David had to restrain Carol and put a bag over her head. Then he struck her on the head with a hammer, which was supposed to be a reenactment, but according to David, during filming he lost control and struck her hard. When he stopped and removed the bag from Carol's head, he realized he had done something terrible. Carol was still alive, but instead of calling emergency services, he decided to end her suffering. He went to the kitchen, got a knife, and carried out his plan. In his response to the investigators' questions, David wanted everything to appear as an accident, but it was hard to believe that because instead of asking for help, he went to the kitchen to get a knife. David did not tell anyone what had happened, not the next day, not the next week, and not even a month later. Instead, he took Carol's phone and began pretending to be her, trying to convince everyone that she had left the country. But the truth was he was pretending to be Carol. The worst part was that Carol had been planning a future that did not include David. She was planning to return to Verona to be closer to her son, and she was also in a relationship with Salvatore, who had given her a ring. The investigation revealed that on January 11th, 2022, Carol and David were preparing to film an extreme video at the request of one of their subscribers. However, it was partially a lie. The person who requested the extreme video was David Fontana himself. He had several accounts and pretended to be someone else, saying he was willing to pay for an exclusive video. David thought he had come up with a brilliant plan by pretending to be a fan of Carol's and submitting a custom video request. The important thing is that this fan wanted David to participate in the video and explain what should happen in it, which was that David should restrain her and place duct tape over her mouth. The details he wrote later suggest that David had planned everything in advance by pretending to be a fan. He told her the password to unlock her phone and that she should send a text message to her friend Salvatore, telling him that she would be having an intimate call with David. Carol complied with this condition and sent a message to Salvatore. However, the latter knew that this was part of the scenario. It turned out that what happened to Carol was not an accident, but rather David had pre-planned a scheme to discover her phone's password so that he could pretend that it was her idea. David succeeded in executing this scheme. Carol thought she was making a video for her subscribers and did everything he asked during the filming. She told David the password to her phone, then sent a text message to Salvatore. After that, he placed the adhesive tape on her mouth and a bag over her head, then took a hammer and did something irreversible. When Carol died, David opened her phone and sent a text message to her friend Salvatore, saying that the video shooting had finished. Of course, Salvatore did not suspect that the person who sent him the text message was not Carol. David lived in the same complex where Carol lived. After killing her, He went to his apartment and left Carol lying on the floor. The next day, he went to the supermarket because he already knew what he would do next. He bought an electric saw, scissors, a saw, and cleaning supplies, then took Carol's mobile phone and ordered a refrigerator online. It is not difficult to know what he did with Carol's body after buying all these items. At some point, he tried to dispose of the remains by burning them, but he was unable to do so, and this explains the burns on Carol's face and hands that were found during the forensic examination. He then continued to store the remains in the refrigerator. He had to make sure that no one was searching for Carol 3 days after her death on January 14th. Carol was supposed to go to Paris with her friend Salvatore. David also took her phone and sent a text message to Salvatore saying that she had contracted the virus and would not be able to travel with him to France. The following day, several people called Carol and sent her text messages, but David did not answer the calls. However, he actively used text messages to convince everyone that Carol was fine, and he succeeded. But David not only did not respond to the messages on her phone, but also posted photos of Carol on her social media accounts to convince everyone that Carol had gone to Dubai. He even paid the rent for her apartment. Carol's friend often called her, but it was clear that no one answered those calls. David did everything to give Salvatore the impression that Carol had found another man. Salvatore believed that and stopped contacting her. David knew that he could not pretend to be Carol forever, and that someone would eventually discover the truth. So, in March, he decided to get rid of the body. Before that, David reported that Carol was tired and wanted to take a break from work and social media. But his plan began to unravel when a tourist found black garbage bags containing Carol's remains. David was shocked when a local journalist named Turtle started contacting and sending messages to Carol. He then decided to go to the police and report Carol's disappearance. The trial began in November 2022, and David continued to insist that the crime was not premeditated. He claimed that he was jealous and lost control of his actions after Carol said she was planning to move to Verona. The prosecution insisted on sentencing David to life in prison. Before announcing the verdict, the judge said that the man now realizes that after he had used her to some extent, Carol decided to get rid of him. And the idea of losing the person who had confessed his madly love for her and who had depended on her because she had helped him overcome the great loneliness he was suffering from proved to be unbearable. David Fontana realized that the young and liberated Carol had used him to some extent to achieve her personal and professional interests. And this is what provoked his killer reaction. David's motive was not jealousy, but the awareness of losing the woman he loved, accompanied by a growing feeling of frustration due to his exploitation and neglect. According to reports from the Italian press, the judge was later criticized for describing Carol as liberated on June 12, 2023. David Fontana was sentenced to 30 years in prison, but the story did not end there. On February 21, 2024, the appeals court changed his sentence. Before the verdict was pronounced, David made a voluntary statement in which he said, "I would like to apologize again to everyone for the terrible thing I did. I want to apologize to Carol's family. I know I may seem heartless when I speak, but I feel the pain inside me. I remember that day and what I did, and I feel great pain. I am determined to correct my actions as much as possible. I just want to point out that I was not interested in money. I don't know if I will ever be forgiven for what I did. I will truly give my life to change everything. I will spend the rest of my days trying to help others and make amends." David Fontana was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 30 years.